Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is nice to see you back. The clock is a bit more than 9 o'clock, so we have to start. The times pushes us. We are back on our conference, the second day. The second day deals rather with physical activity and promoting physical activity in the society in general, and in the second part of the conference we will look what the how universities can have maybe some impact on physical activity, and the conference is supported also by the European Commission through Erasmus Plus program. How much did you take the run today morning? Yeah, nice to see, pretty much hands. Did you solve the task also? Who were with you, all the sisters? Yes, correct. So 10 points goes there. So, as already yesterday, pretty much of you mentioned that the interior of the room is pretty much like a forest. It's actually quite intentional, because half of Estonia is actually covered with forest, which takes or allows us to be quite close to nature, and Estonians indeed like to be with the nature. It gives us also a pretty good opportunities to be physically active. And it's good to say that Estonians, they are, but the younger generation, we do see the problems. And this is why also this conference is about. For the opening words, I have very much pleasure to welcome our Minister of Culture, Mr. Indrek Saar, to give the greetings. Please.
Good morning, dear conference participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Estonian Ministry of Culture, it gives me a great pleasure to greet you at the Estonian Presidency Conference on Sport and host you in Tartu, as was mentioned, in the forest of Tartu. This week is very sport-focused, as we mark the second International Day of University Sports and celebrate the official opening of the third European Week of Sport. I was delighted to hear that you have had a great start to the conference so far, with great presentations and engaging panels on the topic of athletes' dual career in sport and education. Unfortunately, I was unable to join you yesterday, but all the more, I'm looking forward to today's discussions and hearing your ideas. I'm very glad to see so many representatives of international sport organizations and policymakers among us today. According to the participants list, we have over 180 participants from 28 countries in this conference, and among the speakers we have 4 presidents of international sport organizations. So it seems the headquarters of EUSA Executive Committee has moved to Estonia, and thus the European Commission have decided to establish their branches in Tartu. You are very welcome. And of course, I'm especially delighted to hear that our Olympic champion Gert Kante has been promoted to FISU ambassador. Congratulations, Gert. This is a great honor for Estonia. This conference is the second Estonian EU presidency event out of 3 organized in Estonia in the field of sport, and certainly one of the highlights during our presidency. Today's focus is going to be on physical activity in society, which is also the theme and aim of the third European Week of Sport, as well as the International Day of University Sport, which we marked this week. It is clear that physical activity holds one of the keys to society's well-being across all spheres. I'm convinced that this conference, together with the seminar led by the European Commission later today, will help us take forward the topic on the EU level as the presidency, in cooperation with the European Commission, international sport movement and local governments. I'm looking forward to today's inspiring discussions and presentations. I wish us all a fantastic day exchanging thoughts and networking. Thank you.
So we will go on with our session. As there are some new presenters today whom I didn't see yesterday, I'm here to help you. If you are running out of time, I will show you some signs. So please, the schedule is tight today also, and we have to be on time. But the first presenter will give us the introduction, why physical activity is important and what efforts have been done in the European Union to promote it. And this presentation will be given by Mr. Yves Le Lostec, who is the head of the sports unit of European Commission. Please.
Good morning, everybody. Before going into my presentation, I would like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank Mr. Minister for welcoming us here, for organizing this event and for organizing really what is, for the moment, a great event and a great conference. I had the opportunity to say it yesterday in the opening address, but really in the Commission and on behalf of the Commission, I can tell you that we really appreciate a lot the cooperation we have with you, with your team. I think together we have managed already to do a good work, and really I wanted again to express this the pleasure that we have to work with you. But now my task is to deal with a very specific subject, which is the following. Why is physical activity a topic, and what has been done at EU level to promote physical activity? So this is what I'm going to address in the following minutes. And I will start by answering, or try to answer, to the first question. Why is physical activity a topic for the EU? It's not so evident. And the first thing I would say in general is that statistics are not good, and we have tools to measure this, and at European level we have a privileged tool, which is a Eurobarometer that we do every 4 or 5 years, and in 2014 we had one with a lot of indicators measuring the practice of sport and physical activity in the EU, and clearly statistics are not good. Many indicators show that the tendency is stagnation or even regression in a number of fields. Because of, let's say, time pressure, I will certainly not quote all figures, but one of the most known one is that 39% of Europeans never or seldom play sport. This is one of the indicators. And as I said, the tendency is not good. We will see what has happened during the 4 last years in a couple of months, because we are about to launch a new Eurobarometer, which show us what are the present tendencies. The tendency is not good. But of course, the main players in the practice and the promotion of sport and physical activity are on the ground. They are the clubs, they are the associations, they are the member states, regional, local authorities, schools, university, all these actors. And for a number of years, the EU hasn't been a real actor in this field. Now things have changed a little bit because there is an article in the treaty giving the EU the competence to intervene in the field of sport and physical activity, but with clear limitations. We are not the main actor, clearly. We will never be the one who will organize sport activities or physical activity, but we are here to contribute, to help, to support when needed, when there is an interest to do so. It is the same message that I gave yesterday. We can help, and we are now an actor in this field and a potential actor who can help those who have initiatives. But more precisely, more concretely, what can we do apart from delivering speeches and saying that physical activity is important for everybody? We have now at EU level different tools that we can use for this policy. And you have the list under your eyes, and I will comment a little bit on each of them. We have to implement the Council recommendation on the promotion of HEPA, this is health enhancing physical activity across sector. We can fund projects. We have also a specific budget line concerning pilot projects from the European Parliament. The European Week of Sport is a tool, and we also undertake studies and research. First of all, implementation of the Council recommendation on the promotion of health-enhancing physical activity across sector. I mention this because this is the first ever Council recommendation in the field of sport, and it was about the promotion of sport and physical activity as a tool to promote health and to improve health. In summary, what is in this Council recommendation? It's member states with the support of the Commission are expected to collect data, so it's about collection of information. It's about also putting in place national strategies of promotion of health-enhancing physical activity, and it's about networking, because this Council recommendation has put in place a network of HEPA focal points, and the Commission is coordinating this. So 3 things, really in summary: data collection, national strategies, and networking. This is relatively recent because it has been put in place 4 years ago. We just have a report evaluating this strategy, which shows very positive trends, at least in strategies or initiatives put in place by member states. And we are, of course, continuing to implement this tool together with member states and also with the help of the World Health Organization. I don't say more about this instrument, and I go directly to the second possibility we have. It's funding, and it's the Erasmus Plus program. You are aware that now we have this Erasmus Plus program with a specific sport chapter. So for the first time ever, again, since 2014, we have a specific budget dedicated to sport at EU level. There are a number of priorities in this Erasmus Plus program. One of them is health-enhancing physical activity, the promotion of physical activity in general. And you must be aware that there are priorities in Erasmus+, but every year we have the possibility to adapt these priorities depending on the needs, depending on the, let's say, the discussions we have with member states and also sport organizations, depending on what we feel it is important to focus on. And since the beginning, this health-enhancing physical activity has been a priority. It has been one of the key topics on which we have put our efforts. You have here some figures about the number of projects, HEPA projects we have been financing during the 4 first years of implementation of Erasmus+. You will see that in the results which were recently published some weeks ago, 21 HEPA projects were financed at a level of 7.5 million euros. So a lot of more and more efforts put on HEPA. It will continue next year. And you have here a table showing that it is clearly one of the main, if not the main, topic covered by Erasmus+. So an effort which will clearly be continued in the future, and Mr. Minister referred to the seminar we are organizing this afternoon on the promotion of healthy lifestyle, and I think it will be interesting to attend and to hear also the views of 2 commissioners about this, our views for the future. So now, I just mentioned that we have also extra budget coming from the European Parliament on pilot projects, and this is called pilot projects. And last year we got 600,000 euros in order to promote HEPA projects in the field of promotion of sport and physical activities for refugees. So we selected 11 of them. In 2017, it will continue with 3 times more budget. So we are presently in the process of selecting this project. The fourth action we undertake, and on which I will not spend too much time, is the European Week of Sport. We will leave it here live in a one-day time with the launching of the European Week of Sport 2017. My only comment it will be that the European Week of Sport, it's not about communication, it's not about just launching one event every year and then doing something. It's really an event which has to be seen in the broader context of promoting sport and physical activity. It's a tool to reach this. And I remember the mayor of Košice last year saying that at the end our aim is to have 52 weeks of sport in Košice, not one. And this is also our aim. Our aim is really to use this specific week to bring people to sport and physical activity, to make them go to associations, or not necessarily in sport clubs, or to practice themselves in forests, in their garden, etc. So this is really the element of, let's say, more ambitious policy. And my commissioner, Mr. Navracic, always presented as a success story. This European Week of Sport, invented 2 years ago, has really got, let's say, a profile and importance we were not imagining 2 years ago. My last words will be about studies and research. This is something also on which we can contribute. You have some things we have done in the past. We have studied the implementation of EU physical activity guidelines. We produce Eurobarometers. Also in the field and in the framework of expert group, council expert group, we also produce things, documents which can help to improve the knowledge in the field of sport and physical activity. So this is also a Commission's contributions to this general policy on promoting HEPA. So I think that this was what was expected to me, I hope so, just to give you a brief overview of what we have done and what we can do in the field of promotion of sport and physical activity. And I'm now available for potential questions if this is planned. If not, thank you very much, sir.
If there is any questions to Mr. Lostek. If not, then, as you mentioned, our time is a bit over, so if there will be any questions, you can ask afterwards, but we will go on. And yes, small present also, of course. Thank you. So being physically inactive at the individual level costs almost nothing at first, but if it can be looked broader to the society, then for sure it will be a problem. This will be presented us by Mr. Morgan Skirkeby, who is the President of the International Sports and Culture Association. Please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this invitation. I'll be very brief. I'm sorry to not fulfill the dress code, but I found this T-shirt and I like it very much because it has a quote of a very clever man, a researcher, Albert Einstein. And if you cannot read it, I can say it says like, life is like riding a bicycle. To keep the balance, you must keep moving. And actually, we could add that life is like riding a bicycle. And to keep the healthy balance, you must keep moving. I would like to start with a video.
What if you could take a pill to help you live a longer and healthier life, and even lift your mood? The thing is, you could be taking this medicine right now, because the medicine is exercise. As humans, we need to move around for a healthy body and a healthy mind. But across Europe, many of us are not moving as much as we should. 1/4 of European adults are not active enough, and a staggering 4 out of every 5 teenagers. Incredibly, diseases relating to this inactivity cost over 80 billion euros every year. That's more than we spend on cancer drugs in a year in the entire world. But more importantly, lack of exercise contributes to over 1 in 10 deaths in Europe. That's over 500,000 people who die every year because they didn't move enough. If we do nothing, lack of exercise could soon cause more deaths than smoking. We're sitting on a time bomb. So what's the solution? The answer is simple: get people moving more. Moving more could mean cycling to work, playing football with friends, or simply taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Just over 20 minutes a day is all it takes. If only 1/5 of inactive people moved more, every year we'd save 100,000 lives across Europe. That's 1 life every 5 minutes. So yes, you could say exercise works like a medicine, but it's a medicine that's free and available to everyone. So let's get mobilized and let's get Europe moving.
Thank you very much. My task is to explain a little bit about the economic cost, and this was actually the conclusion. But before we leave, I would like to also inform you who is in front of you. I'm president of a sport for all organization called ISCA, International Sport and Culture Association, but I also serve at the other directorate of the European Commission, the DG Sante. And there is a platform called Action on Diet, Physical Activity and Health. And we are one of the few physical activity-oriented bodies there. The most bodies in this platform are diet-focused. And this is actually our critical situation, that when it comes to health, the focus is on diet and cure and not prevention, like physical activity. That means we will not save the 80 billion euro. By the way, 80 billion euro for a population of 500 million, that's 160 euro for each of you. How many of you live in a country where the public spending is higher than 160 euro per person. Not many. Okay, my personal target is exercise is to run 5K, 5 kilometers within half my age in minutes. And I'm not old enough, I'm sorry. This is the second disclaimer of ISCA. We are into moving people because we believe it's a human right, and it's our task as an NGO to enable people to practice this human right. So we try to do that in two different ways. We have two angles of attack. The most used and the cornerstone in our work is to try to assist our members to support citizens in developing initiatives, activities that they can use for promoting physical activity in a local setting. So it's program, it's governance, it's inspiration of new solutions. What is the new Zumba? What is the new tendencies, and how do we cope with that in local association? This is the primary task of ISCA. But the other task, the other angle of attack, is the advocacy. And this is my topic of today. Advocacy is not speaking to each other today. I'm sorry. In this room, there are two persons you should speak to. They're in the front row. The one is the minister, and the other spoke just before me. The rest is not advocacy, that's networking. And this is our task, to consider that outside this room, there is another attitude to sport and physical activity than inside this room. We are pretty good in speaking to ourselves and convincing ourselves that what we do is good, but this is not moving us forward. So advocacy is different, and this is also what it takes to enable citizens to practice the human right to move. So this is what we focus on. In 2015, we asked the Center for Economic and Business Research in London to give us the answer of the question, what are the costs of inactivity in the European Union? What are the costs? Simple question. And they came up with a report, but the main conclusion, as you said, the costs are 80 billion euro per year and 500,000 lives. There are more details in the report, but in a communication process, these are the two we communicate. 80 billion euro, 500,000 lives. Just a little bit about speaking the case, or trying to convince those who are influencers, because this is important. Don't convince each other, convince the influencers. And many influencers of sport are outside the sports sector. The big players are not sport. The big players are those who focus on employment, economy, and maybe also health and agriculture. We will speak about that later today, I hope. This is definition of advocacy, and you might say that advocacy has a little sister called lobby, and you can use the one you want. This is more or less the same. We would like to convince somebody about our case. Simple situation here. On the vertical, you have the power or the influence of the people, and on the horizontal line, you have the interest. And if these are the people that are in our field, if these are the influencers, those who are really interesting for us is those with influence. So what we want to do is we want to approach those with influence and make them more interested in our topic. Politicians working on the main agenda in any society, many of them are very friendly towards sport and physical activity. Very friendly. But none of them will change their main agenda because of sport. It means that a sport argument is not an economic argument. It's not an argument that will change a Minister of Health unless you speak her or his language. And this is actually the case that don't go for those who are already interested in your case without influence. Don't waste your time on people with no influence. Go for those if you can. That's not easy, but go for those who have influence and try to make them interested in your case. And they are not in our sector, they are outside our sector because they juggle with a lot more resources and influence than we have in the sports sector. And then, of course, when we have identified it, it's also access. In some countries, in some parts of society, it's easier than others, but it's all about finding the person, find your message, and get to it, or get to the person close to this person. Sometimes you cannot speak to an influencer, but you can speak to the friend or the colleague of the influencer. Okay, back to this report. That was the reason why we did this report. We would like to make the case of physical activity, but through an economic perspective, because then we could speak to those with economy high on their political agenda. It's, by the way, also an ethical and moral question, but that was, I must say, I presented this video to quite a lot of politicians, and if you take the European parliamentarians, they all say that we knew it was costly, but we are surprised by the figure. Nobody mentioned the 500,000 dead. Money speaks the language. The moral part, no. So that's the reason behind this report, and although there are many data on different costs, the main conclusions are the two you got already, the cost 80 billion euro and 500,000 dead. The report is made by investigating the 6 biggest countries in Europe. Here we still count UK. And based on these data, we have these results. After the report was, so to say, ready, we invited friends and foes to come to a meeting and shared with them the results. This is another philosophy of ISCA. We would like to share openly what we have, because we know that we are not necessarily best, or we cannot communicate alone. We need other stakeholders, both within and without the sports sector. So we invited a stakeholder who could communicate this message, and gave them the data and free use of communication. Nothing comes today by itself, not even lobbying and advocacy, so sometimes you need to buy your way in. And we have both here earned media and bought media, and then we tried to make some media campaigns in the 6 countries where there was specific data in the language of the country. So this is very shortly the background of can say an advocacy, a lobby, or communication stunt on promoting physical activity, but in an economic perspective. So the big question is it working? This and other things that we do. Yves said already that the last Eurobarometer indicated, unfortunately, a little decline. And we must hope that it's stabilized in the coming Eurobarometer, but we don't see increase. And also I would say sport in many countries is a saturated market. There are a few percent to go for, but moving physical activity in general, in a commuting context or in a more recreational context, it's a market. If we ask the Europeans, they also answer, what is your preferred venue for physical activity? They say outdoor, nature. Maybe under the Estonian birch trees or in the land of farming or forest, but outdoor is preferred venue. Are we moving? Yves said a few things on what is being done in the European Union context, European Commission context. This is the self-understanding of the World Health Organization in a global perspective. In 1996, they made the first report on physical activity and health. That's 21 years ago. 21 years ago, there was what we could call the evidence. So So it takes 21 years in some institutions to get from evidence to action, because the Health Organization, the World Health Organization, has this 3rd of August launched what they call a draft of the Global Action Plan for Physical Activity. And most of your countries will probably in May next year sign this action plan. And it's very important for us and you to keep the focus on this is not a report, this is actually an action plan. It's not an action plan on diet, it's not an action plan on health, it's an action plan on physical activity. So, yes, we can say we are moving, but we are moving slowly, and we need all the power of you to communicate, not with each other, but outside the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morgans. We have a time for one short question. Please, don't be shy.
I can say that the reason that physical activity is not high on the agenda, it's because it's not sophisticated. It's not sophisticated in the health business to do physical activity. If it was a pill, it would be sophisticated. If it was surgery, it would be sophisticated. But physical activity is not sophisticated enough to make the agenda in the health sector. So we made a movement pill. And if you allow me, I will give the movement pill to the minister, because this is free. You can take it every day and it will not harm you. Actually, it will be very healthy.
Okay, we thank you, Mr. Kikkobi, and we all have small presents made for you. So thank you one more time for coming. So coming back to the real life again, at still some schools in Estonia, they say that your kid is not allowed to to run in schools. Which brings us a problem that how can we make them move or run? The next presenter is from University of Tartu. She's the head of the so-called movement lab, and she will tell us how we can manage with those kinds of obstacles, or are they obstacles if the problem has been acknowledged. Please, Mrs. Merike Kull, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Minister, dear guests, participants, colleagues, organizers, I am really thankful for this invitation and opportunity to share our efforts and experience in the field of children physical activity promotion in Estonia. So, as previous presentation both have clearly stated, we have a problem, and it's clear there is imbalance between sedentary time and physical activity time in children. And of course, this is not just we see everywhere and every day. This is confirmed very clearly by different studies. And just an example from health behavior, from international study, health behavior in school-aged children, where it's participated more than 40 countries. And we can see that children 11 to 15 years, about 80% of them do not meet physical activity recommendation. So we are in the situation where we must ask the question what we should do change and what kind of solutions we need, what kind of intervention we need, what will be works to change the situation. The Lancet 2012, Lancet have called this situation as the pandemic of physical inactivity and called for global action for public health. In the review, 7 best investment for physical activity, we can see that one of the best investments will be full of schools program. And the reason is very simple. Throughout the schools we can reach to all children with different social background, and it's really important thinking about how to make children move more. Last year, paper published in Lancet clearly stated that we need smart approaches to get people moving. And again, I would like to emphasize that 1K approach stated that this is not just health sector or sports sector initiative, but we need to have much more collaboration with educational sector and with schools. We know that many of our countries have already making some steps to integrate physical activity during school day. We know that, for example, in Finland, they have large-scale national program, Schools on the Move. But the change are needed not just only some countries, it's obviously most of our countries' general problem. And therefore, it's really important to share our different experiences, our success, and of course the failures what we have with this field. So I will now introduce shortly our efforts in Estonia as we started last year our national program, pilot project, Schools in the Motion, with 10 schools to try to find solutions to handle this inactivity problem. And of course the main aim was to increase the physical activity and decrease sedentary time during the school day. And this is based on the school environment. Framework of our program consists of 4 main elements. This is active classroom, active recess, active transport, and at the same time we started process with updating our physical education. We all know that physical education is really positive for our physical health, but considering the school and educational context, we should emphasize much more these kind of positive effect that is important for school. For example, better brain work or better academic achievement. Physical activity can be one tool for better relationships in school and of course supporting the general well-being as well as school satisfaction in schools. So there is a big question for all of us, how to achieve the change. This kind of change that is not just 2 physical activity, physical education lesson per week or 1 sport day during the year. How to achieve the change that physical activity will be new normality of the school day. This is a normal part of the different school day activities. This is a big question for us, and this is the one purpose in our program. And of course, this is our objective and our activities that we should to support the schools with the new skills and experiences, how to integrate physical activity to normal school day, and how to create atmosphere, how to create environment, physical environment that support physical activity. We should to move from a obesogenic environment where we are sitting all long day to active design environment. So we have started with 10 schools. Every school have their own action plan, and every school have their own solution. They are pilot schools, but we can see the more larger picture from different solutions, and really important that this solution will promote it in the real life. It's sometimes very big problem in scientific world that we are working on universities, very good intervention program, but it's not very easy to scale up in the real world. So we used very close cooperation with school directions, with teachers to provide solutions for school, considering that maybe next year every school in Estonia can learn something about that. And of course we are starting with involvement, asking questions, opinions from students, what should be changed in their school that they can move more and they will enjoy that, and of course from the parents. And this kind of opinions will be the basis for development every school's action plan, what they will be realized. And the first element of our program is active classroom. And we know that most sedentary time in the schools happening during the lessons. And so this is our challenge to provide different methods for teachers, to provide toolkits for teachers. We provide different teacher training methods and activity breaks, already easy for use for teachers, and of course they are supported development of different motor skills too at the same time, when they can move, but it's not just moving, but different motor skills will be developed. When we talk about active lessons, it's maybe one of the most one of the elements which makes a lot of questions and sometimes confusion, and a lot of journalists, for example, ask, and what do you mean, active math lesson? And so I would like to introduce just one example, what do you mean active math? And this is a part of our teacher trainings, what have worked different methods. We have more than 100 different ideas for different subjects to prepare and to make for teachers all solution very simple. We can't expect that every teacher can think different methods every day and to use these in their classroom. This is just one example. You can see how teaching may be more easy and enjoyable, and children don't sit all a long lesson in one place. Thank you. And so we can see in our pilot schools that many of teachers have more use methods, go out from classroom and using more active methods in our school, so they don't sit all long time in the classrooms. The second element of our program is active recess, and it's very typical for Estonian schools that school halls is closed, for example, and it's not allowed children to go to these rooms and to run and have physical activity, but we can see that pilot schools have changed their rules, and they used these big halls that have in schools for active recess. Here is just one example where what became quite popular to use this kind to use recess time for dancing. You can see that girls and boys all enjoy the moving, dancing, and we are really happy to see that before the student just staying in the corridors of the school, but now they just can have move. Thank you. And one solution what now is just started in schools is play recess. We can prepare and help schools to train older students as game leaders. Older students organize during the recess the games for younger students. They can have a lot of fun, and of course when we talk about positive relationship in school environment, it's really supportive. And of course, all the physical environment where children are during all day. We can see the new practices from school that they thinking, what they can do. This is kind of fixed equipment or free equipment, what is available for school, and children can use for different activities and again to develop their different motor skills. And it's very nice that some schools are very positive and enthusiastic, and some equipment is made by students, and you can see even the teachers enjoy the active recess playing different games. Of course, we have made research all this kind of process, and I just one research results. I would like to emphasize that we can see the significant change in teacher attitudes. More teachers respond now, fully agree to the statement that physical activity during recess supports on-task behavior in classroom. So we can see here how different purposes from health sector and educational sector will be connected and helping each other. The third component of our program is active transport, and purpose that is every student is going to school actively for at least some part of the school way. It can be supported by schools or local government, for example, by availability of bicycle parking places. So some pictures were just nice to see. So we can summarize here that a school-based program can support development of children's physical literacy and promote physical activity. But at the same time, we can ask the question that is it realistic to have this kind of school, active school? Maybe our purpose is too unrealistic or mission impossible. But we can say, but our results that we are hopeful. First, our pilot year shows that in average 90% of the pilot school personnel reported that in their school students can move more during the school day. So we are just making our first steps in Estonia, considering school-based intervention. And of course, there are no simple solutions, but there is the need cooperation in international level and in the country level. But as we know, physical activity is a powerful tool for health to society, and this is our common challenge, and we are ready for that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Merike. Do we have any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. This practical, theoretical, and practical sides. Or have you had some ideas about this practical movement in schools from another countries or another societies, or it's your own? Fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's every country have their own solutions, as school culture is different, because some of countries very easy to go outside all the day. For example, Estonia is a big problem to go outside to play, as previous presentation said, that natural environment is really important to have moving. So what can I say, that everybody in every country can decide it how and which will be their way, but I can say that school environment is really important environment where we can start our intervention. It's really important as all children are there, and we can see that it can be fun there, and teachers can support that. We have there already professional as teachers, so good luck for every country to start their program in school.
Okay. I have a quick question. As I understood, you are dealing with 10 schools. According to the results, it looks that they are happy, but do you have any connections with the other schools in Estonia? Mm-hmm. Are they willing to step on the boat, or they are saying that, okay, you are doing something, it works because you are doing with them, mm-hmm. dealing with them, but what the other schools think?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I am happy to say that when we are making presentation, we're talking about this program. After every presentation, there will be a lot of schools who are writing us or calling us, and they ask when it's possible to join to this program. So I think that it's quite positive attitude from other schools, and they are waiting their time.
Okay, thank you very much, Merike. We will now go on with our program. We have a next presentation that is done by two professors. Professor Mark Thiebaum is representing the Free University of Brussels and is from Research Group of Sport and Society. And the other presenter is Professor Fred Coulter. He's the visiting professor of sports policy and also from Free University of Brussels. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to start by first thanking the organizers for allowing us to present our work. And second, I also would like to thank the European Commission for allowing us to do this research. And also I would like to refer to our consortium partners. That is Street Football World, ENGZO Youth, and VDAB, which is the employment service of Flanders, the Dutch-speaking part, northern part of Belgium. Actually, the title already reveals the aim of the study. And the rationale for this study is actually the still alarming high rate of unemployment among young people in Europe. As you can see, the specific focus was on or is on employability, and we have used this definition, which is a combination of factors enabling individuals to progress towards or get into employment, to stay in employment, and to progress during their career. A major part of the study consisted of mapping the field, understanding what type of initiatives are there in European member states, and focus on specific elements. So we looked at a number of selection criteria. First of all, those initiatives that target needs. Needs is actually an acronym standing for young people not in education, nor in employment, or in training. We looked at those initiatives that make use, explicitly also make use of sport within their programs. And we then also looked at those initiatives that specifically focus on increasing employability in relation to the general labor markets. So not specifically only looking for providing opportunities within the sports sector. Another selection criterion was to look at those initiatives that have a lasting program, which is not looking only at those, or not looking at those that have a temporary project only, and of course their willingness to collaborate with us during this process. We managed to select and to identify 10 cases in 8 different member states, and as you can see, we did a lot of in-depth interviews with several representatives of these initiatives. We also looked at, we also included observations and document analysis. And because we wanted to go beyond a pure description of of what is going on and what these programs are doing, we wanted to focus on a specific theoretical approach, which tries to get more into in-depth understanding. We try to get a more in-depth understanding, actually, of why and how organizations are doing. And to elaborate a little bit on that, Fred Coulter will explain the theoretical perspective, the theoretical approach that we have been using to analyze these cases. So it's up to you, Fred, now.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I've got the short straw. I've got to explain the theoretical basis of this study and our main findings in less than 10 minutes. I'm going to time myself. If I do it, it'll be my equivalent of getting a world record, because I've then got to pass the baton back to Mark so he can do the recommendations. Okay, so this is the theoretical basis of the study. So this is the academic part of the morning. Patrickson, in a Council of Europe document in 1995, said that sport, like most activities, is not a priori good or bad, but has the potential of producing both positive and negative outcomes. Questions like what conditions are necessary for sport to have beneficial outcomes must be asked more often. Therefore, what we tried to do is move from a black box view of sport that you put people in one end and they come out the other end transformed, to look more at process. What is happening in these programs? So the question we ask is not only if the programs work, but how they work and why they work. So that shifted us from a consideration of necessary conditions, which is getting people to take part in these programs, to sufficient conditions. What has to be provided in these programs in order to achieve the desired outcome, which is increased employability, and for many of them, employment itself. So we move away from families of programs, which are sports programs, to families of mechanisms. How do programs like this work? What are the mechanisms that make programs like this successful? So we're not concerned with sport as such, but we're concerned with the processes and experiences that these programs provide for the participants. And it's not sport, it's sport plus. It's quite significant that none of the people we talked to thought that sport on its own could address the issue of employability. It had to be sport plus other components. You had to add other things to the programs themselves. So what we were concerned about was what works for whom, in what circumstances, and why. Now the issue, the importance of that is that impacts and outcomes are contingent. They're dependent upon the circumstances of the program itself and how it works. So what we were concerned about were mechanisms. How do these programs work? And these are the engines of explanation. This is how we explain, but it's how we also generalize. Where we have such a wide variety of programs, a concentration on understanding generic mechanisms was a basis for generalization. The 10 programs we looked at were widely varied. When you looked at them, they looked very different programs. So what we had to do was look beyond appearance and see into mechanisms and how the programs work. So the theoretical perspective we took here is program theory. Program theory looks at the strengths and weaknesses of a program. That's why this is what program theory looks for is what is the weak assumption in any given program. What are the things in this program, if it doesn't work, the program itself won't be successful. So program theory is the basis for program design and development, and I'm going to show you the program theory we developed to finish off. And it's also the basis for monitoring and evaluation. And this is the methodology that we adopted. Program theory is providers' presumed sequence of causes and effects. Why do they think their programs work? What are the sequence of causes and effects that they presume is happening when people are participating in their programs? What are the nature of issues to be addressed? In this case, employability. And I have to say, employability is a very vague term, but it was very vague. Many of these organizations didn't have a very precise definition of employability. What are the components of the program which are relevant to employability? Why do you provide particular things, and how do they contribute to the development of employability? And what are the mechanisms? How do these components work to achieve the change in the young people that you think that they do? And what are the relevant outcomes that you achieve in these programs for some, because they're not 100% successful, no programs are, and what are the impacts that you achieve? The impacts normally would be employment. So the questions are, what are the cumulative assumptions that you've made about your program, and what are the critical success factors? What are the things that must happen for these programs to work? And this is a process that's known as assisted sense-making. You sit down and you talk through programs with people, and you ask them to explain to you the assumptions that they're making about their program. The second way of doing this, and we also did this, program theory based on research evidence. We reviewed research to identify and test some of the constituent theories. And it's interesting that it was youth work and youth services. Research and youth work was exceptionally useful in providing theoretical basis for some of this work. And so our methodology is a combination of asking people to outline their presumed sequence of causes and effects, and combining that with our own theoretical understanding. And that's my final slide. I'm still within my time, by the way. I don't know, I'm not even on my last lap yet. The second aspect of this approach is, that's a generator, and it's a generative approach to causation. Programs are like generators. They've got lots of moving parts in them, and so it's understanding those moving parts. Programs are conjectures, they're hypotheses, they're theories. What we say is, if we provide these resources to these subjects, they may choose to adopt them and change their behavior in a favored policy direction. That's what we're saying. Programs are hypotheses. And the resources these programs provide may be social, they may be cognitive, they may be emotional, they may be material. But the argument here is that the participants are active agents. They're not passive participants. They themselves are making sense of these programs. They're seeing what they're being offered, and they're trying to make sense of this in order to adapt and change themselves. So the impacts are produced by the relationships and interactions between the program content and processes and the participants' responses and choices. That's why we interviewed current and past participants. We asked them about their experiences and how they saw the programs and what were the most significant parts of the programs. So what we had to do was understand the architecture of choice that these programs offer young people. They offer young people a whole range of components and experiences. What choices are young people being asked to make on these programs? So the operative mechanism of change isn't the program activities per se, but the response that the activities generate, the reasoning, interpretation, and action. So the mechanism in these programs are the cognitive mechanisms of young people, how they respond to what they're being offered. The basic premise of this is interventions do not change behavior. It's the interpretation of the subjects, of the resources provided to produce the results. How do young people react to what they're getting is the key issue. And again, I repeat what I say, mechanisms are the engines of explanation and have basis for generalization. Sorry, this is more like a sprint than a middle distance race. I apologize for that. Right. This is what I'm now going to outline is the program theory that approach generated from the research. It's quite clear that sport is a major attraction for these programs, and most people said that they use sport for bonding, the establishment of relationships of respect and trust between the provider and the young people. It also allowed them in an informal way to identify the participants' developmental needs. In terms of the young people themselves, the green here is the cognitive mechanisms. They generated an ability to teamwork, an ability to communicate, and they develop a sense of perceived self-efficacy. That's the academic term for self-confidence. They were found they were good at something. Many of these young people might not have been good at anything else. They've failed in school, and suddenly they're in an activity at which they're achieving. So they develop a sense of perceived self-efficacy. Now, throughout this, we have mentoring is really important to how these programs work. And this is the moment of befriending. This is when effective relations are established between the people who provide the program and the participants themselves. There's a sense of social bonding going on here. We then, the sport leads into a more general notion of social climate, where interested and caring adults lead to a sense of safety and belonging. The young people begin to feel relaxed and be able to make themselves vulnerable and be able to learn with a sense of safety. Sorry, I'm halfway through my race. I'm getting thirsty. Then we have a more formal process of individual needs assessment. Now, this is really important. A lot of the kids said they were asked to self-reflect, they were asked to become self-aware, and they were asked about their ambitions. And many of them said, we never went through this at school. We were never asked to be self-critical at school. And many of them thought that this process of self-reflection was vitally important to a growing sense of maturity that they found in these programs. And what the individual needs assessment did was it provided a focus and a program coherence. What I would say is that those who very early identified that the program was about employability saw the program very differently from those who thought it was just about sport. When they had an employability focus, everything they did in the program was seen through an employability focus. It made more sense to them. And this is the second bit of the second stage of mentoring. By the way, mentoring isn't necessarily done by a single individual. It's a function provided by the program itself. Some programs, one individual did all this, in others they didn't. Different individuals have different skill sets. But this was direction setting. And it's a cognitive process in which young people reconsider their values, their loyalties, and their ambitions. And this is through this individual needs assessment and figuring out what they want to do with their lives. As a result, then, we had the development of individual learning plans. Again, this gave another sense of direction. They were asked what they wanted to do. Some of them wanted to be sports coaches. Some of them wanted to be clerks, whatever they wanted to do. An individual learning plan was developed. And I put M&E here because the individual learning plan provided a basis for monitoring and evaluating the progress of the young people throughout the program. And these programs, this is what I said with Sport Plus, they also provided workshops in which critical self-reflection and self-development. It's really important to understand that for a lot of these young people, this self-criticism, this self-awareness, this self-development was something that they hadn't been encouraged to do anywhere else. And within the confines of a safe and secure and supportive program, they felt enabled to do this. And this is the third element of the mentoring, which is coaching, in which the young people are assisted to acquire assets. So we have, for example, we have validated qualifications. They do sports leadership awards. This again provided a sense of achievement. Young people who have, I've only 1 minute, sorry. This is going to be 100 meters now, I do apologize. The sense of achievement, they develop organizational skills, communication skills, problem-solving skills, and work disciplines by doing these validated qualifications. And this is where we've called this Sport Plus. What happens in this program with sport? The sport is used at this point for experiential learning. The issues raised in workshops are dealt with on the sports pitch, or in one case that we looked at in a dance class, in which they support and reinforce the workshop context. So what they're learning is actually reinforced through their participation in particular physical activity programs. It's also, the Sport Plus is also used as a content for the practical elements of their qualifications. Some of them run these programs themselves, so they learn organizational communication skills through these programs. The outcomes, many of the programs also offer work experience, an introduction to the world of work and its requirements. Now the outcomes, and again Mark's going to say this, these were not really well measured in these programs, but the outcomes were things like perceived self-efficacy, communication skills, conflict management, problem solving, leadership, and a focus and ambition. And this leads us to the penultimate stage of our mentoring schema, which is sponsoring, where the organizations themselves use their contacts and networks to sponsor young people into employment. Many of the organizations had very close relationships with local employers who agreed to take the graduates of these programs into the jobs. And then the programs all had a preparation for employment, which interviewing, CV writing, and job searching. And finally, the mentoring, ongoing support. One person said to me, the real development happens when they get the jobs. And some of the programs, between 6 months and 1 year, continue to support the young people in jobs. It was one of the reasons that they got the jobs, was the employers felt comfortable taking them because they knew they had external support from the organization with these young people as well. Okay, that's our template for sport and employability programs. We think it's relatively normative. We think that most programs that deal with sport employability have to deal with these developmental issues as outlined in this program theory. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Mark to give you some policy recommendations.
Yes, Fred, thank you. It is a physical activity session, so you were sprinting, right? And I will now switch to warp speed, if you're familiar with that, which means it goes beyond actually the 100-meter sprint. So just give you very few brief outline of the recommendations we've made. Actually, we made them on 2 levels. One level is on the level of the, you might say, the organizations itself. And as what Fred has explained, this basically comes down to the program theory. If you can use this as a kind of guiding framework for organizations, you know you're on a way to get better and optimal actual results in terms of effectiveness. In terms of looking at recommendations for policymakers, we also distinguish between 2 levels on European and member state level, and I will not go in detail. The report will be published quite soon, actually. But we plea actually for the development of a general sport plus coaching methodology, because we saw that many of these organizations, some of them, they do possess this expertise, but it's hardly ever documented how to do it, how to use sport in a sport plus context. As Fred has also indicated, the monitoring and evaluation is very important, and a lot of these initiatives, they are struggling with that because of sometimes lack of resources or because of a lack of understanding. Understanding in terms of how to define soft skill developmental outcomes, how to measure impact, how to administer and analyze the measures. So I think there's some issues there to look further into on that level. On the member state level, to facilitate the access to validated qualifications. Fred has explained a little bit about that within the program theory. So it would be an added value to include this within these programs. To recognize the importance of partnerships, because as Fred has mentioned, this sport cannot do this alone, and by definition, most of these initiatives came not from sport, but are situated in other sectors. And the partnerships with local employers, schools, referral agencies, youth organizations, and so on are crucially important for having effective programs. We have seen a few of these cases we've seen have really built up a high level of expertise. So it would be a shame if not that could be shared with others. So the knowledge transfer is also very important here. And then last but certainly not least, and it might make a link with the previous speakers actually, that we should encourage national authorities to recognize the contribution sport can make within specific and other policy domains such as employment, youth or education, which is vitally important to make this awareness, to raise this awareness among other policymakers. And that's something which we might not only stress at the member state level, but also at the European level, I guess. So that's all for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We are now running out of time, so there will be no time for questions, but again, great thanks. And we will go on with our timetable. There will be a small change. We will not lose the presentation, but the presenter has been changed because Mr. Niklas Södergren unfortunately couldn't come to Estonia, but Miss Elvira Gonzalez-Valdez will take his place, and she tells us about good practice from the field and how to connect sport and employability. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning. Sorry that Niklas is not here. Actually, he's much better looking in the photo. But I didn't take his spot. It's actually a project that I've been coordinated for the last 2 years. He actually initially took my spot, but then I fight for it and finally made it here. So thanks a lot, especially to the sport unit of the European Commission, who has played a big role in us presenting the toolkit here today. And yeah, what we're going to talk about is actually on sport and employability. I mean, I'm very happy that we actually had first the presentation of Mark and Fred, because I think it already sets the ground of the topic. And also for you guys to know that we have actually actively cooperating with the University of Brussels in the study over the last year as expert partners, and especially bringing information on what are the practices in the field. So maybe first, I give you a 1 minute background on who we are, what is Street Football World and what we do. We are an international organization, and we're not a sport organization like most of you guys here, but we're rather a sport for development organization. And what it means is like we don't work actually in the field of sport per se, but we work in the field of sport for development, and we do it through supporting, at the moment, 124 local organizations working on the field of sport for development across the world, and that means working in projects, for example, like gang violence prevention in Colombia, promotion of peace building in Middle East, gender equality in Asia, and as we said a few years ago, as a key priority for Europe, working in confronting youth unemployment and in the increasing youth employability and seeing what the role of football could be. And when we're talking about youth employability, we are addressing a very specific target group, and I think we don't need to repeat much. It's actually the same target group that has already been mentioned by Mark previously. So we're talking about young people in difficult situations, and generally this group of people is needs, but we will see through the presentation that actually each one of the organizations is working with a more very specific target group. And this is how things look like in a very, very, very general very general picture, and this is what we look at the very beginning when we start to think about employability. And we said, okay, if we want to work in increasing employability in Europe, let's look at what are the practices and what are the organizations working in sport for development, and more specifically, I must say that we work with organizations that are working in football for development. Football, of course, we know that is one of the most popular sports in the planet and in Europe, and that is why it's a big focus in this project and in general in the work that the Street Football World is doing. And maybe before we continue, and this is the name of the project that I'm presenting today, I would like to watch a little clip.
I think football is at the heart of any community, and that's probably true for all the countries that are represented as part of the Team Up project. Obviously we've got delegates here from Germany, France, Hungary, and for all of them football is at the heart of what they do, and that's certainly true here in England. I think that football is a great way of engaging with people.
All Talon decided to take part in this project because we would like to improve our employability program, and we learn a lot from the experience of other partners who are much developed in the same area.
I think football is a brilliant platform to use to engage young people onto employability programs, because some of the things that you learn in football, such as discipline, communication, teamwork, all those things are transferable into the world of work, and actually engaging young people and actually showing them that what they're doing on the football pitch is actually stuff that they actually could be doing in the workplace is really, really brilliant.
I think football, it's a really good sport to help youth to have the good behavior that after the company are looking for, like team spirit, like getting the rules of the companies and the job, and it helps them in employability.
Football is such a great medium to bring people together, and for us integration is very important, cultural integration, social inclusion, and we've used football as a tool for such a long time now, so employability then comes natural after that.
In my opinion, one of the most important points engaging people unemployed with football is that football is a point of attraction that naturally attracts the people to come to a certain point and find other people that they can share the problems, their situation, and it's always a connection.
But from what we see happening with other people we work with, you are an example. To be proud of yourself.
It is given a chance a second chance to people that have had a chance but need another chance to actually succeed in what they want to do. I want to become a sports coach for disability and normal people. And once I finish what I'm doing now, I'm going to go into doing my PT, which is personal training, and do that, and then I can go into schools and teach in schools.
I don't like early mornings, but other than that, I'm just looking at, by the time I'm 25, what I see in 10 years' time, what you asked him, what I see in 10 years' time is I'm going to be splashing. I'm going to be splashing the cash.
Interesting about the Team Up project is that we're all working towards the same goal, but we're doing it through a variety of activities, and through sharing knowledge this week we're able to sort of cherry pick and pick the best of those activities from each other.
And that was it. That was the presentation. No, I'm joking. But if anyone feels the need to jump, run around, or I know we're getting close to the coffee break, after watching these kids in the school, I really feel like I want to jump around a little bit. So feel free to stand up or do anything you want. I will try to be short and concise. As you have seen in the video, and is probably familiar with a lot of you that are doing Erasmus Plus programs, this is a cooperation between 8 project partners, 8 organizations across Europe, working in sport in sport for development and more specifically in sport for employability, and all of them with a football component. And actually, 6 of the organizations are also included in the EU study. And to give you an idea, as you might be wondering, okay, why is there an EU study and why is there like a toolkit? What I think the relation between the two, or that we from Street Football World, the value that we see in the 2 elements is, in the one hand, the EU study provides a real theoretical framework on how to, on how and why sport and employability programs work. And what we have done here is a very much practical approach on actually one of the points that Mark mentioned at the end of his presentation, so increasing resources for sharing best practices. So what this project is about sharing best practices and about giving the recommendations and suggestions directly from the organizations that are implementing this project for other organizations that wants to implement this kind of projects. So at the beginning of the project, we set 2 objectives. One was creating an accessible toolkit that include best practices on how to implement football-based employability programs. And the second one, and which is very much in the core of the mission of Street Football World and what we do, and actually as well in the Erasmus Plus Strategic Partnerships program, which is building the capacity of this organization, and through the project enabling strengthen the relation between organizations that are working in this very newborn, so to say, field, or in this field that needs still a lot of development and sharing. And we have tried over the last 2 years to make out of these 8 organizations really knowledge hubs and organizations that after the project can serve as experts in the field to recommend others. They are not all in the same level, but in a way we have tried to, for all of them, to build that expertise. Scary. I don't want to get you too scared on looking into that, but I think I would just share the common outcomes pathway that we have developed through the program. This shows 2 things, and this is at the beginning of the toolkit. And what we try to provide with this is an overall picture of, in the one hand, how the structure of the employability programs are, and on the other hand, what more or less the participant journey is. And what we will be also using it from the future is to share with organizations that are either already implementing some programs or would like to start implementing football-based employability programs, and look what kind of components they could use from the toolkit. So it's actually a guide of the content that is there. And maybe I will provide with a little bit of an overview and some specific examples of how this is working. And as you can see, the journey starts with the engagement of the participants. This is very important because we're trying to reach kids that are not, we're not trying here to educate young people to be astronauts or doctors or lawyers. We're really reaching out the hardest to reach kids, the ones that have failed from the formal education path and that actually are not in school, are maybe dealing with a lot of several problems, physical, mental problems, and football is here really great tool to attract them. When we talk about football activities, we all know that football doesn't only have positive outcomes, it really depends how you implement these football activities. And what we look in the toolkit is like, okay, how do we need to actually implement football activities to have these positive outcomes that we outlined here, which are engagement into another activities, improving soft skills, improving mental and physical health, and improving social integration. And these are very much football methodologies that are focused into different outcomes. For example, a street football world, and in many organizations across Europe and across the world, we're using Football 3 methodology, which is an adapted football methodology to promote dialogue, communication, conflict resolution. When it comes to social integration, we have examples like SARI, a sport against racism in Ireland, who are, for example, bringing two teams together, and they are appointing two captains, and while they are talking to the captains, they tell to the rest of the teams, during the football match, you are going to completely ignore the captains. You're not going to give them the ball, you're not going to listen to them, you're not going to do anything that they're saying. And the captains don't know that, and I've played this game because I was there as well, and it's really interesting, the discussion that comes after that, and how they learn that, through this really practical exercise, how does it feel to be excluded in society? How does it feel to be a minority? How does it feel to face discrimination? So just to give you a little bit of an example when it comes to football methodologies. So if the journey starts on engagement, and I would say football is the start of the journey for most of the organization or for most of the participants, and then there are a few examples where maybe they substitute football with dance classes in some cases, but for what concerns today's sports. And then, as already Fred mentioned, that they have already found out, and that we also acknowledge, is that sport doesn't work on its own. It's not simply you play football with a great methodology and tomorrow you get a job. No, you need, these football-based employability programs are a combination of sport components, football components, and other activities, educational and non-formal education, but other activities that can bring some skills and some expertise to the kids. And finally, these activities in combination with football, which starts at the beginning of the journey but continues through the program, leads into 4 kinds of skills: soft skills, job-seeking skills, hard skills, entrepreneurial skills. And since I'm coming to the end, I'm not going to explain that. I'm just going to accelerate the rhythm of my voice to tell you that what is really powerful about this scheme is that all the organizations that have worked in this project that deal with youth, with drug, alcoholism, with minority groups, with all sorts of different target groups in this big needs group have agreed in countries in North, South, East, and West Europe on that this is a scheme that is valid in their programs. The impact, and of course it doesn't happen for 100% of the participants, but the desired impact is leading into job, into further education, or training. And now, please, let me finish this presentation by giving you a very practical example, and it's the story of Michael, because after 2 presentations on sport and employability programs, you probably don't know yet what this is about and how we go from kicking a ball to having a job. And this is the story of Michael. Who of the 3 it is, I don't know. I was sent this photo by Albion, but not sure. I think it's the one in the middle. So, Michael is a guy that at 10 years old, he was put into social care because his mother wasn't unable to take care of him. And at 14, he left school, and that brought him to a very bad behavior. He started to drink alcohol, consuming drugs, and didn't have any kind of career or life expectation, and his life was really not good. So what happened is he learned about the football trainings, and this is not about like, hey, come to this football training, I'm going to solve your life. No, this is about like, hey, come to this football training, you might have fun. And he started coming to the football training. And then in Albion, in the community, the key role is in the coaches, actually, who are acting not only as football coaches, but actually as mentors, as really psychological support. And these mentors start playing football with the kids, and the kid Michael is starting to feel better, more confident. He's starting to see that, oh, there's another social background here that I very much like. And the mentor says, hey, you know what? There's other activities that are also pretty cool out there. Why don't you start attending to this section, or to get ready to work? Or why don't you start taking these job searching techniques? And Michael said, okay, why not? And this leads him into football coaching academy certificates, leadership award in Albion Goals, employability skills certificates. And so Michael has the skills. Michael is much more positive. Michael has self-confidence. But just one very important thing, when we talk about football-based employability programs and about increasing youth employability, we're not only talking about providing skills. There's a very important switch that needs to happen in this brain of this young person to really take hands on his life and say, okay, now I really want to make a change. And this is what happened through the whole journey of combining employability and football activities. And this is what we say when we say gain additional skills and motivation, move towards independent living. This includes, for example, a very interesting activity that Albion does, that is cooking classes. They find out that most of the kids that were coming to these classes, their main problem was they were unable to move it to independent living because things as simple as cooking was something very, very far away from them. And as we said, how important healthy lifestyle is, this included, for example, cooking classes. And finally, Michael has the skills, has the motivation, has the football certification, and he finally secures his first job working as a specialist cleaner of commercial catering facilities. He's now traveling across UK, and on that successful story, I would like to finish, but first to sell you the toolkit, please, if you are a sport organization, employability organization, or neither of them, but you really want to start implementing sport for employability programs, join us in our upcoming event at the end of November. The date is wrong, and also Niklas is not here, but if anyone is interested in knowing more about the toolkit, we will be presenting it in Brussels at the end of November, and we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elvira. It was really one of the most quickest speeches I've ever heard, but thank you. It was clear. And we are heading now to a coffee break. The break is about 20 minutes shorter, so we'll start still at 11 o'clock sharp. So please make a vigorous physical activity until the coffee table, and then we'll come back. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will expect you back from the coffee break because it is due to our timetable. We have to move on. The day will not end with this conference. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is nice to see you back. The clock is a bit more than 9 o'clock, so we have to start. The times pushes us. We are back on our conference, the second day. The second day deals rather with physical activity and promoting physical activity in the society in general, and in the second part of the conference we will look what the how universities can have maybe some impact on physical activity. And the conference is supported also by the European Commission through Erasmus Plus program. How much did you take the run today morning? Yeah, nice to see, pretty much hands. Did you solve the task also? Who were with you, all the sisters? Yes, correct. So 10 points goes there. So, as already yesterday, pretty much of you mentioned that the interior of the room is pretty much like a forest. It's actually quite intentional because half of Estonia is actually covered with forest, which takes or allows us to be quite close to nature, and Estonians indeed like to be with the nature. It gives us also pretty good opportunities to be physically active. And it's good to say that Estonians, they are, but the younger generation, we do see the problems. And this is why also this conference is about. For the opening words, I have very much pleasure to welcome our Minister of Culture, Mr. Indrek Saar, to give the greetings. Please.
Good morning, dear conference participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Estonian Ministry of Culture, it gives me a great pleasure to greet you at the Estonian Presidency Conference on Sport and host you in Tartu, as was mentioned, in the forest of Tartu. This week is very sport-focused, as we mark the second International Day of University Sports and celebrate the official opening of the third European Week of Sport. I was delighted to hear that you have had a great start to the conference so far, with great presentations and engaging panels on the topic of athletes' dual career in sport and education. Unfortunately, I was unable to join you yesterday, but all the more, I'm looking forward to today's discussions and hearing your ideas. I'm very glad to see.
Okay, most of these events are also, before those events are also children events, and tomorrow you can see that the event that is part of the Tartu Marathon cross-country cycling marathon, that about 2,000 kids will have their own small races before. But we now go on with our official program, and the next speaker is Mr. Adam Rocek. He's the president of the European University Sports Association, and he will tell us about what are the benefits of the integration of physical activity and university. Please, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Let me start with thanks to the organizing for invitation and having possibility to be here in Tartu together with you and together with my colleagues from Executive Committee, and also to my colleague from Estonia for making the university sport a very important topic of this conference. It is for the first time in the history of university sport that we are in the topic of the EU conference, and I believe it will have an impact on the future action and future development of university sport through the Europe. And as you see, the title of the presentation given by the organizing committee, Importance of Sport and Physical Activity of the University, is a title which, the importance of the physical activity and sport at the university do not need any proof in our eyes. Everybody who are here, I think they agree that this is important, and physical activity and sport shall be conducted at the university level. However, I would like to underline a few how important it could be and what could university sport and physical activity could means for the university. So within this presentation, I would like to underline that sport and physical activity are from the beginning on part of the university curriculum. That sport and physical education have positive influence on the university development, may have positive influence on the university image, attractivity, and value on the universities at the educational market. And that is a tool of integration of the university society and could be a fantastic promotion tool of the university. At the beginning, maybe a few words about EUSA. EUSA was funded in 1999 by 25 countries. Actually, we have 35 members through the Europe. Estonia was one of the funding countries of EUSA, as mentioned. Minister Saar, all the executive committee of EUSA is here. I must say, really, we feel here in Tartu like at home. So once again, thank you for the invitation. What are our activities? We are doing sporting and non-sporting events. Among the sporting events, the most important, the flagship event is the European Universities Games. As you can see on the picture, this first edition of the Games was take part in the Spanish city of Cordoba. In 2014, we were hosted in Netherlands by Erasmus University in Rotterdam. 2016 in Croatia, Zagreb and Rijeka was our host. In 2018, we'll go to Coimbra. Particularly, we are happy being in Coimbra. As you know, it's also the oldest university at the Iberic Peninsula, which just underlined that sport is important for the visibility of the university. What is important also to mention, and is also I would like to address a thanks to the European Commission that the European Games 2018 is granted by the European Commission funding. It's received a financial support in the amount almost 500,000 euro. We are so happy and thanks again, although it was a very good application sent by University of Cordoba. And I would like to also underline that, as we know, the European Universities Games is the biggest event which gathering university and university students from Europe at the same time at the same place. So being in Tartu, I think it's worth to mention a few important dates from the history. 1633, I believe my colleague from Tartu and for Estonia know very well what was the date. It was the date of founding of the Tartu University. At the same time, I have opportunity to talk to my colleague, President of Estonian University Sports Federation. At the same time, already in the autumn, the first classes of the physical education, the classes of fencing was held at the University of Tartu. So it's just coming back to my thesis, the sport is an essential part of university curriculum. And then the next date, which is important from the point of view of university sports, is in 1923. 1923, and if I will put a little bit this date in the frame, what was going on politically in Europe, as you know, after the First World War, a lot of countries was liberated in Europe or get independence back, or get independence even for the first time, among them Estonia, Finland, Lithuania and Latvia. And in 1923, the students from those four countries decided to have a common students' competition. And the first edition of this competition was held here in Tartu. What does it mean? It means that already in this period, there was university sport present of the universities, but sport was common practice, and there was also wish to demonstrate that we can do something together on the international stage, and I believe it was always connected to the fact that all those countries get independence and all would like to demonstrate to the world and to the Europe that they are independent, that they are acting. And it is important also to mention that it was even earlier than the first global university sports event was held, because it was just a year ago, 1924 in Warsaw. 1938 is the last edition of the Games before the Second World War. And then, as you can see, we have 60 hours of the period when the Games was not organized. And again, the political wind which blew on the beginning of 90s, the countries, Lithuania, after collapsing of Soviet Union, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia get independence, and this tradition was so strong that the Selm Games was again launched, organized for the first time again in Tartu, 1998, and from this year, 1998, the Games are organized consecutively among those 4 countries. And then a few words about the picture on landscape of the university and university students in Europe. I was wondering to find some legal definition, what does it mean university and what does it mean the education. And about the education, I will find one definitions which I believe it's the definition which include all. But the education is a process of acquisition of knowledge, but not only knowledge, but also skills, values, beliefs, and habits. But if you look at this definition, which are posted to the screen, they usually underline that this is the process of education, of learning the young people, and the university is the place of research. Because it's never mentioned that, not often mentioned that university is something else. But if we come back to the definition of education, which I was just presenting to you, it means that it's something more. It's not just a formal education. It's also education for a life. That means that the skills, habits, belief, which we will take from the university will be with us through our life. And I believe the habits to have a healthy lifestyle, to practice physical activity, this is also the habits which shall be taken from the university, and university shall play an important role if teaching or educate the students to have these habits. And what's the number of universities in Europe? We have quite good data related to EU countries. We do not have such a precise data which is related to non-EU countries. Speaking about EU countries and applicant countries, we can say that it's around 4,000 universities. It's about 20 million students, including non-EU country. From the perspective of OISA, it's of course our members. It's about 6,000 universities and 30 million students. And the biggest manifestation EUSA have ever sporting manifestation was last year in Croatia, and we have about 5,500 students, but among 500 universities, European universities. That means almost 10% of higher educational institution was a part of our games. That's again proof that sport has a value and sports means something for the universities. And then I would like to just briefly say a few words what was the development of the physical activity at universities in Poland, but just from the formal point of view. And then again, if we are speaking about the historical data, it's important to put some overview, some frame. So the end of 18th century in Poland, it was the period when the Polish kingdom at that time was not really in a good shape. We were slowly became less and less important country, and the end of the century, the higher educated people, they took some efforts to a little bit change the direction of the development of country. Finally, we were not successful. We lost independence, but it's maybe for the different presentation. It's not for today. Anyway, in 1783, there was a Commission of National Education established the law which forced all educational institutions in Poland to have compulsory physical education classes. At that time, honestly speaking, only university was a formal part of education. What was the lower level? It was mostly organized at-home education, because the higher education was mostly for the elites of that period. It was not the common goods which was available to every people of the society. It was just for the elites, just for the noble person. So they were forced to have a physical education classes. We know also from the historical documents that 1817, Jagiellonian University also implement compulsory physical education classes. Again, 1910, when Poland appeared on the political map as an independent country, we have compulsory physical education classes, but only at the level of the first level of education and secondary school, not at the university. Second World War, Poland became country which was turned to the orbit of influence of Soviet Union, socialistic countries. As you know, in the socialistic country, they put a lot of attention for the sport and physical education, and for the implementation for the sport and physical education or each level. So, as you can see, systematically the number of physical education was grow, and those two pictures which you can see, they just demonstrate what was the meaning of physical education in different periods. So at the beginning it was just to try to be good servant, good civil, to be served in military, and actually what we are doing with physical education is just to do for fun. So I just get the message that I should conclude very soon. So I would just to say why we have discussing with our colleagues and different entities what could be a role model university for the university of future, university which is sport and physical education friendly. So first of all, this university should offer the physical activity or physical education classes to all the students of the university and available for students. And what could be benefit for the students and for the university? Of course, for the students, benefits is fun, health, we are spending nice time. And we have a social relations during these meetings. And I believe it is also important for the university. As you know, the university are much diversified now, and students for the different faculties, they do not have much opportunity to meet each other. So sport can give them such an activity. Secondly, we have students which are quite talented, skilled, but not on the Olympic path. So for those students, I believe there should be offered a program or organization in Sandov Club which allow the students to represent the university in competition with different university. As you can see, I put one picture from our EUSA championships from Hungary from this year, which was, I believe we have about 500 students which represent the university for the basketball. And finally, it was a topic of yesterday, dual career path. Again, with one picture from last university from Taipei. I believe it could be a great value not only for the students to have a dual career path, but also for the university. I believe that there is a big promotional impact could be if university will demonstrate they have a talented student. So I think university, if they implement the dual career path, it means that first university feel social responsible for the athletes which are devoted their time for the sport, also representing their country, but also university has be economically beneficial because of it, because this is, I think the sport is a best promotion. So that's a little introduction to the topic. I believe I will not cross much my time, so thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. From that point, I'm glad to call our next speaker, who is Mr. Jussi Anzala. And he's from the Finnish Student Sports Federation, and he's the special advisor for university sport. Please.
Thanks. And thanks for inviting me. It's my great pleasure to be here in your great sports conference. In the following 20 minutes or so, I will tell you some key elements of our national recommendation for university sports in Finland. I will give you some historical aspects of the issue and also basic contents of recommendations, and also some insights and methodological choices behind the contents which I regard as interesting and important. And in the end, there will be some future prospects. But before going to the main topic, I will very shortly give you some general facts about my employer, Finnish Student Sports Federation. As you can see from here, we are quite old, and we are also quite big, at least when measured in terms of our members. And this is our federation's big vision or big objective. Nowadays, or at least few years ago, only 30% of students exercise enough from a health perspective. And by a health perspective, I mean international guidelines for health-enhancing physical activity for adults. So our vision for 2020 is to increase the level up to 50%. At this moment, I think the actual number is 35%, so at least we are heading into the right direction. I bragged you earlier that we are big, but actually our office is quite small. We have our 4-member board, and then there are 4 employees, so we are like, okay. So we are like 7 to 8 people in our office. And here are some examples of our actions and goals. And as you can see, recommendations for university sports are only one part of our actions, although I regard it the far most important because I'm responsible for it. In recent years, we have also tried to create some models to reduce the amount of sitting. And in the below there is the very small model of surprise squat. So I dare to suggest you that we will try this in this our session. It is very simple model. Whenever I or anyone else here shouts surprise squat, everybody goes up and make one squat. You can make it with your phones and laptops, it's easy. But because of the narrow space, make it carefully. So, surprise squat. Okay.
Thank you.
As we were told by the gentleman before, this is really a medicine for us. It is healthy to break continuous sitting time. Okay, let's go to the main topic. Here are some historical aspects of our recommendations. From 2006 to 2010, our Finnish government were quite heavily pressured, and at least partly by our federation, to enhance students' sports services at the universities. We were lobbying like markings in university laws, also national sport programs and government program. And 2009, we made a concrete suggestion to the Ministry of Education and Culture to start a process towards the minimum criteria for university sports in Finland. And luckily, 2010, we managed to get an expert group which was led by the head of universities who grinded or worked towards the recommendation, and finally 2011 those recommendations were announced. So it took like 5 to 6 years before we managed to get the situation that we have a mandate to create those situations. As a second part, here is basic contents for our recommendations. which is based on a sports house model. So in the foundations of recommendations, there are two indicators. Sports in the strategy of university, and then the second one is the funding for sports. And in the functional structures, there are also two recommendations, which are human resources in planning of sports services, and also the actual facilities and premises for sports services. And in functional processes, there is one recommendation for a feedback system. And the main objective in our recommendation is the functional sports services, which are measured by the versatile selection of sports and activating new users, and also the user rate of sports services. So they are basically 8 basic recommendations. And let's take a little bit closer look at the contents of the first 3. At the strategy says that the strategy of university should contain the aims of sports services as well as the means for achieving these aims. And the funding, the specific content of the funding recommendation says that on the annual level, university should invest at least 30 euros per student in their sports services. And as a last example about human resources, the specific content is that each university should have at least 1 full-time employees per 5,000 students in planning of the sports services. If you want to look at the specific contents of all those 8 basic recommendations, there is a link to it. They are also in English there. Here are some additional quite important results that are relating the recommendations to actual students' physical activity. Our survey revealed that the supply of sports services had the strongest correlations to students' actual physical activity. And also aspect that had the strongest correlation how much students use the sports services were the range of alternative of sports and also the adequacy of sports facilities. And quite surprisingly, also the labor units that are allocated to sports services were strongly correlated to actual students' use of sports services. And the last thing here, I will come back to a little bit later, but basically it says that students and maybe we all sit too much. So I suggest to you that we celebrate this last result by surprise squat. As a side effect, it keeps us awake. As a third thing here, I'd like to highlight some key insights and methodological choices behind the contents of our recommendations. As I already said, the sports house model really is the basis for our recommendation. And then I want to just emphasize that it is very important to operationalize visions, defined visions, and also make them regularly evaluated. So first, the sports house model. Actually, the model was originally invented by Students' Research Foundation already back in 2007, so many years before the recommendations. And it is based on balanced scorecard methodology. And I have some notes about Just a moment. As you may know, in general, the balanced scorecard is an especially suitable performance management tool for non-profitable organizations in which the key objective is not making money. Thus, the balanced scorecard methodology suits for the university sports quite well. And originally, the model didn't include any recommended levels, but it provided for an expert group a useful theoretical framework to work towards those recommendations. And I also think the last point has been of some importance. At least it is nice to know that our model is based on an established and approved methodology. Okay, let's move forward. I think it's very important to operationalize defined visions and also regularly evaluate it. The expert group who worked towards those recommendations gave a vision for university sports in 2020. Which says university sports is an established and appreciated part of the studying and working environment in every Finnish university. I may be wrong, but it seems to me, at least in Finland, it is not that usual to operationalize defined vision. I mean, make them practically measurable. Thus, I also think that it's quite rare that the satisfaction or realization level of the visions are regularly evaluated. We are just trying to make it otherwise. Here is a chart how the recommendations are followed by Finnish universities. So in those columns there are those 8 basic recommendations, and in rows there are every Finnish university. And this basically says that the red cells are bad, meaning that the recommendations are not followed, and the green ones are good, saying that the recommendation is satisfied. And this is the same chart. The previous chart was from the beginning, 2010, and this is the same chart from 2014. As you can see, in 4 years we invented the yellow color. But if you take a more specific look, compare the strategy, the first column here, it is very red in the beginning of process, but in 4 years there are lots of satisfactions in university strategy. There are markings of sports, so maybe the funds will come also later. I sincerely hope that the situation will be like this in 2020. But as a methodological issue here, I just want to highlight that this really is our operationalized vision for Finnish university sports. In other words, if the chart is all green, our vision is fulfilled. Then university sports really is an established and appreciated part of the studying and working environment in every Finnish university. So I just want to stress that it is important to make defined visions also practically measurable. It's much more effective in that way. So he gave me 1 minute. So here are some future prospects for our recommendations. I think our recommendations are a little bit old-fashioned, since the focus is almost solely on traditional sports facilities and things surrounding them. But actually, we are right now in 2007 in the process of updating the contents of recommendations. And most importantly, we will add 2 new components to them. We will add some kind of guidelines for reducing sitting time at university campuses, and also some kind of guidelines for sportifying university campuses. I have 2 pictures left to motivate these updates. As you can see, with today's furniture, one has to be very clever and also daring in order to reduce sitting at Finnish universities. But students are clever and daring. And I also think that there are lots of possibilities to sportify Finnish university campuses also outside traditional sports services. In addition to games like that in the picture, universities could provide activity points in which there are, for example, gym balls, elastic bands, hanging or even pull-up bars, etc. And I also think that some technological and pedagogical solutions might help to maintain physical activity during the studying day. So let's do it once more. Surprise squat. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Jussi. Actually, I would like you to stay on board because you are also in the panel. But we'll go on quickly with our panel. The panel discussion: why should university deliver sport and physical activity? It's my pleasure to call the moderator, Mrs. Michelle Tanner, who is the president of European Network of Academic Sports Services. Please. And her team will be Dr. Verena Burk, who is the Senior Executive Committee member of HISU. Mrs. Nettie Becker-Bosch, who is Head of the Customer Relations and Communication from Maastricht University. Mr. Lawrence Ursprung, member of the Executive Committee of EUSA and Director of Academic Sports Association of Zurich. Please. Mr. Ermo Tikk, who is the coordinator of student sport of University of Tartu. Please. And Jussi will be equipped soon, so he can also join. But the discussion is open. Please, Michelle.
Thank you. Can you hear me? There I am. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here, my first time in Estonia. It is a beautiful country, and thank you to all the Estonians for your very, very warm welcome. To my colleagues here and to the audience, I just want to describe what's going to happen. You've seen some of the panel sessions already. We're going to have a conversation, and we'd like you guys to also contribute to that conversation about the importance and the relevance of university sport, which is a topic that we're all very passionate about. As the president of European Network promoting university sport, it is my great pleasure to introduce all these wonderful people. So I particularly like Jussi's presentation and his surprise squat. So with your permission, maybe we'll continue with that through this session. Would you like to take responsibility for surprising people?
Okay.
Oh, so let's start. Surprise squat, folks. Let's go. Well done. No sleeping today. Okay. To start us off, I would like to ask Verena, who has a vast amount of experience as an academic and a policymaker in the university sector. Why should we bother? I mean, lots of people here know how important university sport is, but when we're talking to other people, why would a university even bother about university sport and physical activity?
Yeah, this is a large question because I think you have to answer that question from different perspectives. We heard in the last 2 days, today and yesterday, the perspective of students and student athletes. But for me, maybe we miss the perspective of a volunteer in the university sport. It could mean that a student or also a staff member could be a volunteer in a sport event, but also in organizing and in the administration of university sport. As Jussi already mentioned, in Finland, the leaders of the university sport are students on the national level, and I think also in the sport clubs on the local level. And I come also from a country where the involvement of students in the organization of university sport is very large. So you get other skills as you normally get when you are an athlete or a normal participating student. That means you get leadership skills you can really use later, not only in your academic life, but also in the labor market. And the second perspective I would like to mention is the perspective when you work at a university, when you are academic or maybe a person in the administration, because in my understanding university sport is not only sport for the students but also sport for the staff, and that means from the professor to the administration secretary, for example. So this is some kind also for health promotion for them. So this is also a task of university in my understanding, because when we talk about universities, thousands of people work for that university. And maybe there's a third perspective, because for me a university, and I come from a city where it's dominated from the university. It's 1/3 of the inhabitants of the city where I come from are students. So it's a big innovation place. And what we also do is to involve the whole city, the whole community, the citizens of that city to get in contact with university sport, because university sport is normally more flexible when we talk about new trends, new directions, because sport clubs always, it takes time when they make the decisions, but university sport is able to react immediately in the next semester to offer other courses, other activities. And I think this is something also what we could take into consideration, the role of a university in a city and the role of the university sport in the city. So it's the influence of these university sport for a city and the sport in the city. So these are the three other perspectives I think we should also take into consideration today.
Yeah, I think that's very important to. Lorenz, as a follow-up to that, do you agree, or do you want to add anything, do you think, that we need to consider?
I do agree. Usually, once in a while, I go to the presidents of the 3 universities that I have the opportunity to organize sports programs for them, and ask them, well, why do you want us? And of course, that's a difficult question, because maybe their answer would be, oh yes, now that you speak of it, we don't need you. But no, but they have two answers. And one is excellence, and the other is social interaction. And we talked about, in the panel yesterday, we talked about a lot about excellence. So why elite athletes are interesting for the students as well. I see that very strongly in our university, but I will not elaborate on that. But the other thing, the social interaction, is something I find very interesting. If I look at universities, the architects only speak with the architects. The chemists only speak with the chemists. And the philosophers, they don't speak with anybody else. So, the more, I studied philosophy as well, so
speak to God, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
But, so, you get more and more specialized in smaller and smaller areas. And creativity does not only evolve in the center of where you work, but also at the boundaries where you touch other disciplines. And universities find it more and more difficult to get people to interact. And when you do sports, you do interact. If you do sports climbing, you're in a boulder hall, you will discuss the problem. Well, Michel, how would you do that? I can help you. And you cannot do the climbing all the time, so you get to chat. Even if you're in group fitness, you would think group fitness, okay, everybody's doing his muscle pump stuff. It's not true, because we always go together. And if you're not there, next week I will ask you, well, Verena, why were you sick? And then we'll go afterwards, we'll have a coffee together. So this is a wonderful place for social interaction. I think this is one of the main assets of sports in university sports.
You're absolutely right. It's an important and excellent vehicle of integration in the university structure. Do you think, though, that we should be, I'll go back to Verena for a moment, as an academic, that we should be recognising the involvement of our students as volunteers or as club captains in the academic transcript, for instance? Should we do that? Should we be encouraging that?
Well, we have this discussion in Germany since a long time now, because when somebody is involved in the organization of university sport, these students spend a lot of time and energy in this work. And we have normally in our bachelor and also master program a dedicated area for, we call it soft skills or communication and presentation skills. And what we are discussing is how we can put the work you did for university sports in the transcript. This is discussed in a lot of universities, and we made some efforts, but I think, of course, we should, credit that with credit points, in my opinion.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn to the student now to see if the student thinks that's important, Ermo. Would you think that students would like to have some sort of formal recognition in their transcript, in their education, for their involvement in sport? You are one of those people who have given a lot to sport as a student.
Yeah, that's right. No?
Give them a second.
Yeah, I think it's important because when we look at the trends, the lectures and the courses where students can get credits for sporting or for organizing sporting events, they're really popular, and they are getting more popular because there are always limits on how many people can get, and more students are left out because they can't fit into the courses. So students are definitely interested in these activities, and especially in the University of Tartu, we are quite academic still, so there's not many opportunities for us to practice the theories and the knowledge we are getting, and activities like organizing student events and competitions is one part of putting that into practice. And for me personally, it has helped me significantly in my personal career next to the university studies.
You've transformed the way sport is organised in the University Tartu. Is that fair to say?
Trying to do it.
Okay.
A few years ago, it was organised through the student council, where the members change every year. So that, in my thoughts, every year the person who got the sporting organising started from the clean sheet, and you can't do much in 1 year, especially when you don't have the information, the contacts, the long-term plan and everything. So at one point the student council decided that they are focused on only university politics, so that they don't have time and interest organizing the sporting part of it. And at that point I think I was in the community of university sports for a year, I think, and at that point I stepped in to create a self-appointed group of students who are willing to take it over, so that we can implement a long-term plan, and in the future I hope we can get the legal part of joining the actual structure of the university. And then currently we are happy to cooperate with the academic sports clubs, academic sports club in the university.
I don't underestimate the power of what you've done. A lot of our organisations in our network have varying levels of development, and that start-up process that you've created is very important for the future development of sport. But you mentioned there that you want to create a long-term strategy. So you're quite realistic, obviously, in the fact that at some day you will no longer be a student, and you want to create some sort of legacy. So how do you do that? How do you create that long-term legacy, so that when Ermo is finished driving this, what is going to happen for sport in Tartu?
Well, in part of looking a person to give it all over to, I've started creating the team over the years to bring into the community, because in Estonia we have a really cool community of representatives, the student representatives from all the different universities and schools. So for me, the basic motivation came from that community, because we can all do it together. So I have started to bring new members into the community, so that they could see the motivational part of the community as well. And in the long term, I think we're facing the shift of generations, because if I look a little bit into the past, it was mostly like competitions and traditional sports, but the C generation that's already in the first years of university studies are more individual, and they aren't interested in so much the competitions, but the trainings and general activities. So I think it's important to shift the plan towards the activity part, and maybe focus less on the university competitions.
Okay. Yeah, very good advice. And I know that you're going to be successful, because you've already achieved a lot of success. Nettie, if I could come to you now, you have a vast amount of experience in running a sports service in Maastricht, and also you're aware of what's happening in the environment in Europe and in other institutions. But from your own experience, can you perhaps give us some examples of how your structure operates, and how and what's important, and how sport is relevant in your university?
Thank you, Michelle. Well, to begin with, I'd like to state that Maastricht University is a very international university. Actually, the latest number is that we have over 50% of international students. Of course, our neighbor countries, Belgium and Germany, are represented, but also students from over 100 nationalities are at our university. And that brings me back to the first part, and we've heard it today a little bit, but I'd like to emphasize that physical activity in universities is very important to socially interact, but also to integrate really fast. Not only for the international population, but also for the students who come from a different region and are not from the closest region. And so going to another city, going to another country, that's quite a challenge for a lot of students. And I think, and I'd like to quote our former General Secretary of the United Nations, Kofi Annan here, like sport is a universal language. It can bring people together. No matter what origin or background or religious beliefs or economic status. So I think, and that's what we see at Maastricht University, that people from all over the world, they really easily integrate in our city and in our university because of the sports program. We also have a lot of student sports clubs. That's actually 27 of them. They're all run by students. Student boards change every year, and there's also a lot of opportunities for this international population. Actually, one of our 2 years ago, an Estonian girl, Kate, she was one of the board members of the Sports Council. So there is opportunities for everyone, and not just for our Dutch audience or Dutch students. So that's very interesting, I think, and that's kind of the basis of how we at Maastricht University at the Sports Services work. Another example is that we opened our new facilities like a year and a half ago, and what we did, and I think it's quite unique, and it might be interesting for universities here present, we added study spaces to our sports center. And I remember at first I thought, study spaces? I mean, it can be true that we have to put down the volume of our body pump class because there's students studying. But on the other hand, it's working actually perfect. We have 175 learning spaces in an open loft and in rooms. So students can spend here all day. At the social interaction part with the sports bar and the study spaces. And our extended sports offer, open from 7 in the morning to 11 at night, makes us a new hotspot, and we try to create a home far away from home. And I think we're pretty much doing good in that.
So you are mixing the services?
Yes, we are actually mixing services, yes.
You see, this is music to your ears. In your framework, you're talking about how the Finnish University Sports Association are trying to develop guidelines for the universities to do that. And I really liked your picture of adapting the equipment and furniture for our students to learn. So do you think sport is more than just providing classes? Should it be a part of the fabric of the university?
Shortly, it should be both. The traditional sports services are very important, but I also think that models for reducing sittings and sportifying university campuses are also very important. But I don't want to forget the traditional sports services. Also, in the process of updating our recommendations this year, an expert group has emphasized don't forget the traditional sports services. They are very important also. So both sides are.
Yeah. Do you think students would appreciate more learning spaces and sport going to them instead of them having to come to sport and physical activity? Do you think that's part of the future, maybe?
Of course, because even if we look at in more general perspective, the life is getting faster and faster, and we have less time to travel around the city to find the facilities or go to lectures and everything. So if we come closer to the students with that, it will definitely help them or give them more opportunities to participate.
You guys agree? Do you think that's important? That we make sure that it's part of the life of the university?
Well, when we talk in FISO about it, we talk about the sport-friendly campuses. That means, and I was very impressed about the school, the program of the school, and the possibilities to move or to have physical activities when we saw the presentation today. Because I totally agree with Jussi that we have these traditional places, location like sport hall and so on for the traditional sports. But I think we could do more in universities to make it more sport friendly. Yeah. We see it at schools, but I think at the moment it's often so separated. When we want to play sport, we have to go to the sport hall. So I think there could be really a good combination, and it's also very easy, in my opinion, in all the smaller universities or higher education institutions. They do not have so many sport halls or facilities, so they have to be very creative, and it's possible because, of course, you can do also yoga in a classroom. This is not impossible, something like that. So I think you have to be really creative, and I think at universities you have these kind of people who are creative, so it should be easy to do it.
Okay, just in relation to what we think is going to happen in future, so we kind of know where we are with university sport and how important it is. Nettie, or maybe you see, both of you, if you want to, in terms of the practical delivery, what should we be planning for in future? Well, go to Nettie first.
I think to add to Verina's comments, I think we should bring activities to the lecture halls and so on. And one of our professors at Maastricht University developed a really nice break. It's called STAF, and it means stand up for fitness. And it's a bit the same idea of your surprise squat.
Oh, sorry, surprise squat.
Yeah.
Make it double.
Thanks, Nettie.
Well, something like this, but then it's actually during a lecture, and this professor just shows a slide. Of course, the first week he explains what stuff means, and then just suddenly during his lecture there is a sign, it said stuff, and everybody knows, stand up for fitness. The whole audience stands up, and they decide for themselves if they stay there for a minute or 5 minutes and so on. And the lecture just goes on and on and on. So that's really interesting to add physical activity in a really easy way. No changing, no going to the sports facilities, just very easy. Yeah.
And you see, do you agree with that? Do you think we should, or what are the things you think we should be planning for in future in terms of sport and physical activity in universities?
Yeah, I think that the strategy, as you said, not that the students will come to the traditional sports services, but the sports services or sportifying and reducing sitting is coming to the lecture halls. I think that's effective strategy.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Lorenz, would you like to add anything to that? Because I know you've got lots of ideas about what sports should be doing in the future and how we should be looking ahead in planning our services.
Before I worked for university sport, I used to work for the government, for the Federal Office of Sport. And we always had discussions with the Federal Office of Public Health. Well, who is promoting what? And we try to make scientific definitions of sport and calorie output and consumption and so on. But in the end, we defined, okay, if you change, you're close, not mentally. If you change, it's sport. If you don't change, it's public health. Which means if I take the bike to work in my clothes, it's public health. But if I do the 60K in the evening and I have my sports clothes on, then it's sports. And I think, yes, of course we should have both. But it should be a lifestyle, and the stuff is funny. I had the same thing with a broom. When I was a teacher, I had a broom, and every letter for the broom was for a certain physical activity, so I did that with the kids. But in the end, you have to change the lifestyle. And I think our great opportunity at the university is that we are working with future decision makers and opinion leaders. So we should be able to bring both of sport and physical activity to become a lifestyle for them, because they will carry that out. And one thing is really to have an active campus, and the other thing is really, and I like your recommendations, you see, because we need to have very, very, very low barriers for the students to do sports, and I mean real sports, with sports clothes, because just standing up is good. I like the surprise part.
Oh, sorry folks. You're going to hate me for this?
But in the end, we want 20 or 40 minutes of vigorous physical activity. And so low barriers that every student can participate in sports, I think that is very important. And when we look at where the students come from, they come from high school. In physical education, in high school, usually you have games, you have gymnastics, you have athletics, hopefully you did some swimming. If you look what the sport is, what adults do, they go hiking, they go running, they do cycling, they do swimming, and they do skiing, in Switzerland at least. Well, this is not what they learned in high school. And most of the sports that the adults do are not the sports they learned in high school. So where do they learn that? Where do they learn about combat sports, about body-mind sports, about individual training, cardio, as you said, workout, which is getting more and more important? They did not learn that in high school, but at the university they can learn that. All the group fitness, the body pump, they do that in university. And our mission should be that we show the students a huge variety of sports. They know, they find out which sport is their sport, they know how to do it, and they want to do it for the rest of their lives. And so I think we're in a very privileged situation at the universities that we can work with these students, because we can really help to change society for the better.
Yeah, I really like that. In my own institution, we're looking at the education project on how sport can enable it, and physical literacy is a feature there. So that I was talking with Verena yesterday that academics in my institution often think that their bodies are just a transportation mode for their brains. So we have a challenge to incorporate the full mind-body into lifelong practices and habits. So I 100% agree with that. But from a student perspective, back to you, Ermo, you have done an awful lot. You've transformed and set up a structure which is going to be sustainable for the future. But I'm just wondering, you know, you've got some policymakers here in this room, you've got some influential people in the university sector and also in universities. From a student perspective, what are the challenges for us now that we need to address? What help do you need as a student to create a better environment for sport?
I think there are some different aspects. The first part I see in our university is the communication part, because I think there are great opportunities for students to do sports, but it's hard to get the information out so that they know it. And since there's so many different institutions and facilities in our university, and every one of them organized differently, and the information spread isn't structured in a universal way, the information just doesn't reach the students. So that the structuring the information is definitely one part where we have to work on. The other part is, I think, funding, because students usually are the poorest part of the society, because they just moved out from their homes. They still don't have careers and the income, and the funding in university sports is, I think, quite poor, because if we look at the youth sports, it's governmentally supported by the persons doing the sports and activities in the clubs. But when we get to the transition part, the funding stops, so that the universities are funded only for the research part. Okay. And I think maybe we can look new ways on how to fund the student sports as well. And I think the transition part is important because it's a part where we can figure out who's the professional and who's the active lifestyle part, and then the further we look, the problem even continues at the company sports side and then the adult life, because I've been in that sector as well.
I'm not surprised. You have, I believe, involved in startup companies and helping them evolve. So you have a lot of experience in how to get things moving.
Yeah.
So I actually think you could probably answer your own question in relation to the funding, because you must have that same dilemma in the startup company situation. How do you address it there?
Well, the funding in startups is always difficult because there always has to be someone who gives the money, and it's another subject for time being. But I think the student sports funding should be assisted by the government as well, next to the university research funding. But regarding the startups and the business side, I think there's a great opportunity to learn from the business side, because if you start looking at the successful businesses and startups and even corporates like Microsoft and Facebook and so on, all of them are changing their organizational culture so that the physical activities in the meeting rooms and in the breaks and if in the early days there were 1 or 2 breaks per day, then now there's like 30 minutes of working time and 10 minutes of relaxing and then playing games and everything. So I think there's a way to learn from them and bring that side as well to the universities that are maybe developing more in a slower pace than the business side.
Yeah, I think that's very important. In the first challenge that you mentioned, I'm going to ask Nettie maybe if you could give some advice to Ermo in relation to the communication and reaching students, because I know you do this very well. So perhaps you could describe how you reach out to your students and how you actually engage them in your programs. How does that work?
Thank you for your compliment. Well, I think we have a little bit of experience over the last years. We see a lot of new students arriving every year, and what we do actually is we go to, well, there's always an introduction week at our university, and with our sports department, a lot of volunteers, we are there. And what we hand out is our Try 5 card. And it means it's try 5 times for free. Besides a nice offer, it's also a very nice conversation starter. Because when you go up to someone, a new student, and say, hey, what would you like to do during your studies? And they say, well, I don't know yet. And then I say, well, here's your I don't know yet solution. Just try 5 times for free. And people actually love it. And of course, it's I don't know if we have so many members because of the Try 5 or the other way around, or if they would have become members anyway, but it is a nice start. And of course we spread the word when we hand out these cards. We make them make people eager to go get them by spreading the word via newsletters. The university helps us by giving the email addresses of the students. We are a university department, so that makes it a little bit easier. So everybody knows that we have this deal going on, and it's just one example of trying to get at least the new students to enter the sports facilities and to check it out, and it works really well.
Okay, you did mention the business piece and the funding piece, which I'd like to ask Lorenz about. You know, we're talking about the approach of the university taking responsibility for sport and physical activity. But in many cases, in some institutions in Europe, it's becoming a business, a funding opportunity. What do you think of that? Do you think the responsibility should be with the governments, with the university to fund sport, or should we be looking at generating income from these services to support student activity?
Well, that's a very political question. Depending on where you stand politically, you will say, well, the state has nothing to do that, we can organize it privately, or you find the solution the other way around. I think in universities, I believe education is something that belongs to the state. I would not privatize education. That also goes for universities. And then the sports side within university, I also think you need some basic funding from the university side. And then you can go and try to sell it. And for the selling part, there's one bad news. There's no recipe. And then there's one good news, and that's the image that Fred Coulter showed briefly in the beginning of his presentation. You have this unhappy smiley face, you put it through the black box of sport, and out comes a happy smiley face. And what Fred and his colleagues try to do is to find out what happens in the black box. And I don't really know, but I'm happy that it works. So this is the story we can bring out to the private sector and say, hey, this is a great thing and it works. You put unhappy people through sports and out come happy people. So I think this is a unique selling proposition. And then you have to convince people and companies that this is the way to go.
Okay. You see, from a national sport federation point of view, do you think sport and physical activity is a marketable commodity that we should be looking at, bringing some business benefits back to the university?
From my point, I'm not a fan of about the customer or marketing university sports. But I want to stress that we have to have some kind of an better marketing solutions, for example, by means of social marketing techniques and behavior economics and etc. If you want to reduce smoking, you have costs of reducing smoking. You may lose some social interactions and social bondings. And also starting sports, there are some costs. You lose time or something like that. So you have to have more complex techniques to sell our product.
Yeah, I think so too. Just in terms of moving this into the wider context, I'm going to come back to you, Verena. Do you think that with your involvement in FISU, in terms of policy, the future of university sport, do you think that there's more we could do to lobby, to advocate for university sport, and how do you think that should happen? This is not a loaded question, it's only your opinion. Please don't take notes.
Well, there is always space to improve, always. Also from an international or European perspective. So, of course, the influence of FISU or OISA to a university is not big, but what we can do is to deliver some policies and recommendations how university sport should be organized. We have to take into consideration when we talk about Europe or international perspective that university sport is not the same in different countries and continents. So it's always difficult for us to give these recommendations. So we make more proposals and suggestions, and also, of course, we offer our help if there is a problem in a country. It's difficult for us to go directly to the universities. We now try it to get in a closer contact. The FISU president, Oleg Matitsyn, mentioned that yesterday. But of course, we are dealing more with the National University Sport Federation, and we we hope also our members will deal with their members, the universities. Okay. So we try to do our best on this international level.
Okay, Lorenz, would you like to add anything to that?
I'd love to. We had Morgan Skirkeby before, and I think he said the key word, it's all about advocacy. So you have to go to the people and, again, sell what you want to do, but sell sometimes has a negative component, but you have to convince people or promote your ideas. And then you have to distinguish, well, in which context are you? Within this group here, we don't have to talk about the benefits of sport and the values inherent to sport, because we all know them. So in that context, maybe in a sports federation, you have to convince the sports federation that university sports helps them. That, for example, European Universities Games or the Universiade is like the second next thing to the Olympic Games. So, and if you're an athlete, if you're a canoeist, and you have been at the canoeing world championship, there you have 21 canoeists with 21 coaches and 21 physios and 5 media representatives. You go to Universiade or European Universities Games and you have 5,000 or 10,000 athletes. That's what happens at the Olympics, and you want to be prepared for that. So this is what we have to talk about in the sports sector. If we're outside the sports sector, maybe we can convince people about the values inherent in sport, but what we certainly can do is show them, hey, sport is a great story to sell whatever you want, because there's so many values that can be transported through sport. And sometimes we don't like to do that because we say there's enough values within sport, but there's so much you can transport through sport. And then you have to get the people involved. And in the end, I always have the image, I go to the CEO of a bank in my suit and tie, and I want to end up in a changing room with him in the sports dress.
Yes.
A dress? Really? Maybe change the language here. I think from a wider context there is a lot that we need to do in terms of influencing policy and advocating and lobbying. But Nettie, just in relation to the internal, the structure in which we're operating with our colleagues in other universities, how can we support and help each other in this situation in Estonia and Tartu? They have emerging structures. What can we do, and how have you learned from your colleagues?
Well, we've learned a lot. We share our best practices, but we also share our challenges. We have a national network, but we also, of course, have our European network. And it is from that network that now we are in this project, actually. I see that Mr. Lolastek has just left the room, but we actually have a grant for a Active Campus Europe project. It's run with 16 partners out of 7 countries, and it's about activating these inactive students. So, and it all comes from networks and visiting these conferences, forums, and so on. So it's really important to visit those, share intelligence, don't stay on your little island, but just spread it. And you can get so much new information from colleagues all over Europe, at least.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important, because we learn from each other.
Yes.
We can help each other to develop our services, and that also informs the policy and the direction and the future of university sport. If I was just to ask each of you one thing, so, you know, I'm trying to help facilitate some of the audience here who have some challenges and issues that they face. If you had to give one piece of advice on the importance of the future of university sport, what would you say? Yussi, please.
Let's start by Verena. If you have some, I will follow you.
Okay. Who would like to go? Would you like to go first? Lead the way.
Okay.
Thank you, Lorenz.
The importance of university sport is, this is easy because I said it before. This is your chance to show students, to change the life of a student. And because a student is a future opinion leader and decision maker, this is the chance to change society for the better.
Brilliant, thank you. Who would like to go next?
I can follow, because this is optimal for me as a FISO representative, because we have the motto, today's stars, tomorrow's leaders. So we also think that every student should be influenced from university sport to get leadership skills, experiences, to be a better leader in society. So
Super.
It's the same.
Sold. Ermo, what would you like to say? Your one piece of advice?
Maybe from the leadership part, because I have seen, and I think it's an advice for the students, but as well everyone else, that if we who are sitting around this room start with showing the leadership and showing the way how to step forward and make the steps even longer, then perhaps the process will be faster and better.
Okay, so Nettie, thank you.
I think what's very important that universities keep in mind that students are not just there for education, but they spend like 3, maybe 4, 5 years at the university, so they should take care of the head and the brains, but also of the heart and the lives of students. And I think physical activity is a very easy way to kind of add up and help for that.
Excellent, thank you, Nettie. And you see, you have had time now.
My advice to people at university sports would be, I already said it, it would be very important to study business like behavior economics, because there are, if you want to change one's behavior, you have to realize that there are not only benefits, but there are also some costs. But the behavior will change if the benefits are seen better than the costs. So my suggestions or advice is to study social marketing and behavior economics and techniques and insights in them.
Very good advice. We have finished the main part of the discussion, so I'd like to have a surprise squat. Now that we woke the audience up, and we have some key influencers and policymakers in the audience, so I would like to open the floor up to the audience. I have a colleague there. Can we get a mic to Bill? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, panel. Some really interesting and valuable ideas. We focused mainly on the university's goals towards students and a little bit on staff. And I wonder whether or not we can move away from the ivory tower of university life. And my question would be, what value can universities give to the local community through the delivery of sport, activity, programming, and more importantly, how do you publicize this to the wider audiences?
Are you targeting that at anybody in particular?
Yes, I think Lorenz would have.
Okay.
I actually thought you were looking at Verena for the International Day of University Sports, because that's one of the initiatives where university sports is shown to the wider public, and where university sports also opens to the wider public. Well, one part of the answer to your question is what we said before. Through working with the students, we influence society in general, so that is a benefit to the wider public. And the other thing is, I think, yes, we may not stay in the ivory tower, but we have to be open and show what we do. Because if we stay in the ivory tower, people will get jealous and say, oh, wow, university sport, they got everything and we have nothing. Mm-hmm. And in some universities, the offer is really brilliant, but then you have to share it with, with others. And we do that in our University Sports Association, that some of our offers are open to the public. We have a run across Zurich with 14,000 starters, and maybe 4,000 of the runners are from Zurich, from the Zurich universities, and 10,000 are either alumni or friends of these students, so everybody can actually participate. And so we have a number of these events that help show what we do, and everybody can benefit from it. And one more thing is, I think what Adam said, what the role model university should do in sports is have a sports for all program, have the option for training for athletes at a higher level, and be there for dual careers. And I also think the dual career thing is something that really reaches out to society, because these people especially will be role models in society.
If I may, Nettie, you might have some contribution to that piece in terms of the community.
Yeah, what's interesting, our sports clubs, for example, the volleyball and the basketball clubs, in their competitions, they play against the city of Maastricht and other as well. So we meet a lot of guest teams in our sports facilities and the other way around. So that's really something too. That's how a university sport is very visible for the community of Maastricht, for example.
Maybe if I can add just a little thing. We were talking about selling and marketing and making money out of university sport. One thing that we do is we open university sport to alumni. Alumni of any university. You don't have to be an alumni of Zurich. You can be from Bern or Buenos Aires or Barcelona or wherever, and you can still participate in university sport. And we have about 6,000 alumni in our university sports organization, and they pay a lot more than the students, of course. And through that money, we are able to improve the student the university sports offers.
Yeah.
So also there we have some link to the community.
It subsidizes the students' use, so we keep it at an affordable level. So there's good models of practice there. Any more questions? I think I saw another hand up there. I can't quite see who that is. Yeah, maybe you could tell us who you are.
I am Victor from Tallinn University.
Thank you, Victor.
Lecturer of gymnastics, physical education. I loved, Lawrence, your statement that, and it's true, that we are teaching physical education students only in certain subjects. And it would be nice to teach them also all other subjects, what people are doing around. But problem is that approximately 20-40 years ago, we had a lot of EAPs for practical subjects in study programs for PE. Nowadays, these practical subjects are a lot of decreased, a lot. Of course, we need theory, that's nice, but we need very much also practical subjects in our programs. So my question is concerning your good, nice statement. Would be it possible that international institutions could influence universities to increase practical percents of subjects in their PE study programs? Then we have opportunity to teach bicycle, whatever, mountain ski, but whatever. This is my question. Is it possible that institutions, internationals, could influence universities in this way? I hope you understand my question. Thank you.
Are you targeting it at? Sorry? At Lawrence. Lawrence, you're up again.
Thank you very much. Maybe we should have lunch together, because I actually wrote a book about that about 15 years ago, when we were comparing international physical education teacher education programs in several universities in Europe, not in Estonia, unfortunately. And my first question is, I don't see any chance. Because the problem that we have with physical education, teacher education, is that the system of reference is an academic system of reference. And so I will tell you just a very quick story. I was in a network of general secretaries for physical education, teacher education in Switzerland, and we once had a meeting of all these general secretaries at the house of the University of Bern. And we had lunch, and next to us was another group, and there was the rector of the University of Bern. And he came to our table because he knew somebody there and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" "Oh, these are all the general secretaries of physical education, teacher education." And he said, "Now I'll do it right. Oh, but you're not in your sports clothes." So that's the image that we had, that the universities had of PE teacher education 20 years ago. And so the effect was not to ask, what do the children in school need? But what is the system of reverence at the universities? So now in Zurich, if you study physical education teacher, the first 3 years you're together with the chemists and the biologists. And it takes you 5 years before you ever get to a gym. So now you have the same academic relevance as the other students. But I'm not sure whether this is actually what you need in the end to teach in a gym. So no, I have no solution for that.
You have a lunch date now, though, okay? Do we have time for one more, maybe? Is there any more questions?
Yes, I think we have for at least one question.
Somebody from Estonia, maybe?
Anybody? Well, if no, then no. Okay, thank you for a productive work. This panel was really successful.
Thank you. Maybe we should have another surprise squat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, surprise squat. Yeah. Everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's not so surprising.
Thank you.
Okay. So, good things supposed to end some time. Our 2 days of conference will reach its final. There is not very much left, but I have a real honor to call our Minister of Culture, Mr. Indrek Saar, to have the closing speech of this conference. Please.
Dear sport policy designers, friends of sport, the Estonian Presidency Conference Sport, Education, University, joining efforts for athletes, dual career and active society has come to an end. The first day of the conference focused on athletes' dual career, sport and education. We heard that dual career is a pressing issue for the EU because of losing talents. A high number of athletes leave school prematurely and talented athletes drop out from sport due to unfavorable setup or lack of support. Dual career is a cross-sectoral sphere that needs addressing and cooperation between sport, education and labor fields. The second day, which by the way, also, as we remember, made an unofficial world record in the fastest way of speaking by presenting the program for NEET young people, and that's why I would ask you to give a special applause to the interpreters, because for them it was a real training. But what the second day of the conference highlighted was that physical inactivity is a global pandemic of the 21st century that costs 80 billion euros, and it costs lives. 500,000 people die per year in the EU because of it. According to the Eurobarometer, 59% of Europeans never or seldom participate in sport, and about 80% of kids between 11 to 15 are physically inactive, according to a recent research carried out in 40 countries. Sport can be a powerful tool for employability and contribute to other domains. The conference once again highlighted the importance of dual career and also raised physical inactivity issues and stressed the needs for cross-sectoral cooperation in solving them. I hope the conference, that was attended by several important stakeholders from governmental representatives of the EU member states and the European Commission to the key international sport organizations such as FISU, EUSA, ENAS, ISCA, ENGSO, contributed into yet closer cooperation between the stakeholders. On behalf of the Estonian Presidency of the Council of the EU, I thank all the speakers and participants of our conference, and last but not least, the European Commission for the great cooperation and their support. I hope you will enjoy the seminar on healthy lifestyle this afternoon, successful celebration of the opening of the 3rd European Week of Sport tomorrow, and will find the time to get active during the European Week of Sport and beyond, that you get active for life. Surprise squad. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Minister. I have just some final words to say. I already did it at the end of this session, but please, those foreign guests who might have questions according to the timetable of the traveling, it's in the front desks. Ladies are helping you with that. The next event will be in our National Museum. That starts at 3 o'clock. You can walk there, it's not far, but actually there are buses also going there, and the buses will go at 14:15, and they come back also. They come back at 18:45. So nobody will be left behind. Just wait for those buses. The buses will leave from the lobby, I guess, meeting point in the Torpat restaurant. So, from the behalf of the organizers, I would like to one more time thank the presenters, all the participants to come to the conference, make it like more than a discussion. But I would like from my side also thank the organizers who put it all together and make it happen, and especially as there are quite a lot of people who did it, we can just say that 2 people were mostly leading them, and those 2 people are Tina and Kairis. I saw Kairis is here. Maybe Tina is also in the yes. Tina too, please. Thank you very much. I think it was organized perfectly, and I wish you a pleasant stay in Estonia for those who will attend the next sessions also, and I can call this conference to be closed. Thank you.